I know with some applications, you can tie in an agent ID to that specific deployment tool. So what I'll do here is I'll just basically just use just a standard 110 agent. But again, it can be super you can be super creative on the way you want to build this. So I'll just say Windows 10 agent, and then here is a drop-down menu. What is the operating system of the machine that we want to do the investigation on? Is it a Windows 10 or is it a Windows machine? Is it a Linux machine? Is it a Mac machine? Because we really don't know exactly how many sources this particular user has. As a employee, we can have up to 8 or 9 type of devices, from cell phones, from computers, from tablets, and all that different types of sources. So we want to make sure that we identify all of those sources, and that will be part of the discovery process when we're working with the HR team to see what that is. In this particular case, we know that from the DLP alert, it was his Windows machine. So we're going to choose the operating system, and now we have the agent type. We have 2 types of options that we can choose from. We have the ad hoc and we have the shared. I won't go too deep into the differences between ad hoc and shared, but just know that the ad hoc is going to do a one-to-one relationship with that remote node. So what that's going to do is it's going to basically, once you deploy it, it's going to call back into your magnet software ecosystem. Kind of think of ET phone home, right? I'm here, I'm available. Now I'm ready for you to start the collection process. The shared agent configuration allows you to deploy an agent to multiple machines, and that machine will communicate to multiple examiner workstations. So you're just not bottlenecked onto just one examiner workstation. So you have different ways to really connect to this remote endpoint, depending if you have multiple investigations going on. This is a cool part. This is where the masking details comes in. So if you want to be a little bit covert and create a different name other than the default name that Accent gives you, this is where you can actually do that. So by default, it's going to give you agent.exe. But if you wanted to use a name that maybe conforms to an application that you have already in your environment, let's say you have, like like some sort of medical applications like Medisob. Well, I'm going to go ahead and create the logical name and tie that to the agent. So if anyone's a little bit technical savvy, he sees, agent.exe running on his in task manager, that's going to raise a little bit of red flags. But if you create an agent that conforms to an applications that you already have deployed onto your infrastructure, now they're not going to really know. Now, the other thing that you can actually do a little bit deeper once you're building this agent is you can add in additional metadata information. So this is what we have metadata fields. So if you want to go in there, in this case, what I'll do, I'll say, I'm going to call this SVC host 32.exe. So it's a Windows system file. But now I can basically include some metadata information. I can include this is a process. The company is Microsoft. Product name Windows 1998. Right? So you can see how granular you can actually get when you're encapsulating the information into the agent binary itself. So if anyone wanted to take a look at this particular file and they wanted to see the details tab, they can go in there and they can actually see that the metadata information somewhat matches of a Windows process. Now, we all know that this SVC host is a Windows protected file, so maybe we'll change some letters around, right? So in some previous presentations, we have, how we spoof information. Well, we're going to spoof this particular binary file. So we'll just basically change some letters around. So this way, there's not some sort of Windows conflict and say, hey, there's already a file that exists called SVC host 32.exe. And kind of go on from there. And then here at the very bottom is going to show us exactly how we want the agent to communicate back to our Axiom cyber process machine. Okay, so here you can actually either put in the IP address, we can pull in the fully qualified domain name, or we can just simply put the, like I said, the IP address. So, or fully qualified domain name. So all three are definitely supported. Here I'll just type in some arbitrary IP address and then the port. And this is where I was talking about before, because a lot of the situations that I ran into, some of the investigations is that A lot of the network, I call them network Nazis, they're like, no, 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 we're not going to use Oracle 4.3. We're not going to use these specific ports. So try to get with them and see exactly what ports are allowed. And then from here, now you've established a really good relationship with them. Now you know, okay, I'm working with the network security team. We're not adversaries. We're going to work together to try to figure out what's going on. Okay. So once you identify what the IP address is, now we can start building that agent. Once we start building that agent, now we have that agent already in that type of package format. So now what we can do, now we can either do one or two things. We can manually deploy this agent, or we can use a third-party tool like Tivoli, SSEM, CrowdStrike, any other types of deployment tools to get this agent deployed over to that remote endpoint. Or we can just deploy this manually. I mean, raise of hands, who has used PS tools to deploy stuff remotely? I use it all the time. Back before even things were even available with any other types of EDR. So you can certainly do that. Just know that it's going to require some admin credentials to get that agent copied over and then executed. So there's different ways you can actually do that. The other thing you can take advantage of is using this tool to not only deploy it, but you can also have it executed remotely as well. So you have two options that you can actually do that. Okay. Once you get that agent deployed, now I have direct access to that remote endpoint. Okay. It's going to get deployed. And once it gets deployed, now I can go ahead and see exactly what's going on Dusty Bottom's computer. Now, from the beginning that we were talking about before, right, there were some alerts that came in from our DLP appliance that said there was some sort of unusual activity, right? He's asking some resources that we don't know what's going on. Now that we have direct access, now we want to connect to that remote computer. So once we connect to that remote computer, and I just did this, by the way, ahead of time just to save us some time, but this is that Dusty Bottom's computer that we want to work on. So now that we're connected to it, we're going to have three options that we can choose from. We have the options to go over target locations. We can go after files and drives, or we can go after memory. Now, this is up to you. And when you're talking to your superiors of what exactly do we want to really go after? And some of the times you're like, I don't know. You're the investigator. You tell me what we need to collect. All we know that this guy has some unusual activity that we want to take a look at a little bit closer. So I really hate those conversations, to be honest with you. It's like, give me a scope of what we want rather than collecting the everything. Do we want to go after target locations, or do we want to go after the entire physical disk? So like, what's the difference between physical disk and targeted extractions? Now you go into another whole spill of explaining exactly what a targeted collection versus a full file system extraction is. So Axiom Cyber does deliver those different capabilities, so we can do target locations. So for target locations, this is going to be extremely useful for even those incident response type of cases. So let's say, for instance, we want to go after maybe the user's profile. I can go in here. We have pre-built options that we can go after and say we want everything on the user's desktop. We want everything in that user's documents folder. Or maybe I want to go ahead and capture all of the registry information, right? And then here you can also build in multiple profiles. So let's say, it's an IR type of case and we want to go ahead and only focus on maybe the event logs. We want to focus on the swap file and maybe some volatile artifacts, which is going to include, your live system information, active connections, who's in there, prefetch data, jump lists, all of that good stuff that could be really helpful for you when you start analyzing this data. Okay. Why am I bringing this up? It can be really helpful for you if you know you're going to be doing multiple investigations and rather clicking on one individual targeted extraction. Now I have the option to build a profile, and all I would do now is just go ahead and choose that specific profile and start the extraction process. Okay. The other option is going after either specific files and folders, or do I want to go after the actual physical disk or logical volumes? What's the difference between physical disk and logical volumes? The differences is that, am I interested in unallocated clusters, unused disk area, file slack, RAM slack? If that's what I'm interested in, then I'm going to do a full file system extraction. If I don't care any about that, then I'm just going to go with a logical extraction, which is going to remove a lot of that information that maybe is not needed for the investigations that I'm doing. So it's going to be really up to you as the investigator to decide what it is that I'm really going to go after. Okay. And then, like I said, you'll have basically those two options. In here, now, maybe they give you a little bit more information. You say, well, we know that this event triggered between a certain period of time. Great. Now I can build in a filter and allow me to extract data that falls in, which is within a certain time frame. I can say that this event happened between December 31st of 2024, all the way up to January 7th of this year. So now I have a window of exactly what I need to extract. Question for you.
Sorry, yes. So say for example, we call so we have a financial machine. With the part that detects the DLP, the loss prevention that triggers. So say okay, we're using Microsoft or solution for that, or some aspect of it.
Right.
How soon in the past we would have had to have this in? Is it like we have a suspicion and then we approach to get this thing put on, or should we like go ahead before because that part I'm clear with the other stuff. Like,
and that's a really great question. It's going to depend on how important is the information to you. Right, so I can absolutely implement this, a few weeks, few months after that. But what's going to be the initial risk, right? Can I forward a month or a couple of weeks, or do I need to respond now? Because we don't know exactly the type of information that that was either leaked, or we just don't know what's on that machine. Now, if I can afford 2-3 months after the initial event that came in, then that's going to be kind of up to you to decide whether or not it was important or not. Now, let's assume, right, 3 months from now that you do implement this tool, and now you're investigating it, and it's like, oh my God, I should have acted during the point where the DLP, our DLP appliance triggered this event, right? So
ideally we should run into
right. I mean, from my experience, if there is going to be some sort of trigger that's going to allow, I'm going to respond immediately, right? I'm not going to wait, because if you wait, then you don't know the exposure. You don't know how much data was actually maybe infiltrated out. And then once you know that the data that was infiltrated out contained information, especially for those medical type of facilities, industries, that can pose a huge loss, right? Now we have thousands of data that has just been exposed out into the dark web.
I think related to that. So I'll find things with it now. So I use Microsoft as an example, like there are other DLP things. Their whole brand is
super friendly. Yeah, you can integrate this with multiple types of DLP tools, right? Yeah, so the DLP would just be the initial trigger, right? Now I just want to go ahead and start doing the deep dive analysis of using our tool. Now, I'm going to mention, there's a lot of tools out there, right? I come from an in-case a long time ago. I was there for a long time. But how deep do you want to go, right? I love this, and I'm going here in just a second. We talk about the actual data that I was investigating, but do you want to go super deep into the file system, or do you want to take a look at it from an artifact extract perspective, right? So we'll basically get into that. But what I would like to do is have an arsenal of tools to allow me to figure out exactly how I'm going to do things, not just one. I mean, this is going to be my primary tool, but if I want to do maybe like an email investigation, maybe I'll use a different type of tool to give me what I want. But for the initial collection, extraction, maybe data analysis, I'm going to use Axiom for that. I think right now, Axiom is the primary tool for all digital forensic investigations. Yeah, great question. Any other questions? No? So just kind of finishing this thought, so you do have the options to really build in those filters when you start doing those investigations. And then if I wanted to just maybe dive deep into a specific folder, directory, or file, I can certainly do that. Or maybe I want to go ahead and just do a cursory search on TXT, right? So I can just do TXT, it's going to show me all of those text files in there. If I want to do a doc, give me all the listings of all the doc files that exist on this particular machine. I can certainly do that by running a filter on that specific endpoint. Okay, so there is a lot of functionality that you can actually include when you're doing that, when running and getting that agent deployed onto that remote computer. Okay, and then here is basically the full gamut of it. I want to collect everything. This is going to be the full file system extraction. I want everything included in allocated space because I'm not sure exactly what I need to collect or I need to review. In some cases, it's going to be really up to you. If you think about it, nowadays we're not looking at 32 gig drives that was 20 years ago. We're looking at petabytes, terabytes of data. Now, do you want to do a remote collections off of a drive that has 10 terabytes worth of data remotely? Probably not. I wouldn't do that. So unless you have a pretty solid, a connection, right? Then maybe you consider it. But if you're working with a DSL line that's probably 500 megs down or 20 megs up, maybe that's not a good idea. So just kind of use your common sense and you work with your team and let them know, okay, do you want a full file system extraction? And they don't know what it is. It's part of educating them. And because automatically what they're going to tell you, yes, absolutely, get a full, like, well, do you know what that is? And they're going to say, not really. And you explain to them. You explain to them exactly the benefits of doing a full file system extraction versus a logical extraction, right? Maybe you want to do a targeted data and target only specific files of interest, right? That's going to be a lot faster than just do, a collections off of, 10 terabytes of data. So it's ultimately up to you and just making sure that, is it worth it? Is it worth it pulling down, terabytes and terabytes of data remotely? Maybe not. Maybe not.
There's no option to set up a secondary storage location to dump remotely.
Great question. So we will go into that when we talk about large extractions, because when you start looking at specific areas. So let's say, for instance, that we're here in Barbados, right? And we know that we need to do investigations that is a different region. How can we do that? How can we facilitate that so we can get the data quicker here in an efficient time? That's what we can start talking about next. And I'll go into that question. So kind of hold up to that question. So this is what we can talk about speeds, and doing stuff like that. But yes, you can store it into a different repository, but it's not going to be a repository local to that area. Because now we're going to talk about SaaS-based type of solution. Okay. And so just to kind of just end this piece here, because I don't want to talk too much about process. I really want to go into the investigation of why you're actually really here to take a look at that. And then, do we want to go after memory, right? This is going to give us a full false or a full dump of the memory, or we can go after just specific processes. Do I want to go after maybe some processes that are just unknown to this file system or to this machine? We can start picking and choosing which processes that could be helpful, especially for those IR type of cases. Like, hey, this is a rogue process. This shouldn't be on our system. Let's go and do that extraction and bring that into Comay or volatility or any type of extraction tools so we can start taking a look at that a little bit closer. All right. Cool. Any questions around what we just covered? Hopefully it wasn't too much. I know there's a lot of information there, but what the whole point of this was to lay that foundation so you guys get an understanding of exactly what we did to collect a machine that wasn't local to us. It was somewhere, it was in another state, and we were able to collect this information remotely. Okay. So now let's go into the meat and the potatoes. So here is Axiom Examine. So now that we have collected that data, we ran some processing options. Maybe we included some OCR, processing, filtering, and things of that sort. Maybe we ran some keywords, and we also included maybe some other different options in that processing job. Once that processing job has kicked off, now we're going to start looking at with Axiom Examine. Like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, Axiom Examine is part of the analysis work. This is, we're going to go in there and start looking at the data that we collected and extracted. Okay. So what we're looking at here is our case dashboard. So think of the case dashboard as our 30,000-foot view of the data that has been ingested into this application. Okay. So here we can basically see on the left-hand side, the case overview. We can take a look at the processing details of what we ran. We can see if the case was actually exported into a report format. It's going to give us an overview of the actual endpoint that we did the collection against. And then here are just basically quick shortcuts that we can navigate to, and then specific bookmarks and tags that we've also conducted throughout our entire case as well. So kind of keep in mind, these are all clickable, so it's a good way to kind of jumpstart into those different types of artifact categories. Now, for me, I'm a little bit lazy. I don't like to click on more than one things if I have to. So you can certainly click on these different artifacts, or you can click on this drop-down menu, and this will basically point you over to our artifacts category section. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here for a second, so there's a little bit more real estate that you guys can look at. Now, the first thing that you're going to see is a refined results. The refined results is a way for you to really look at things that are going to be more presentable to you, things that you're going to look at more frequently. Like I want to maybe take a look at closer at the Google searches, or I want to take a look at the user accounts. I want to see exactly maybe, who has logged into this person's computer. Maybe the guy that we're looking at was actually someone else who logged into his account, and now we have some data where we can say it wasn't him. It was actually John Doe who came into Dusty Bottom's computer and started accessing them. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I'll just walk away from my computer and not getting the, Windows lock key. And now someone will go in there and sort of start messing with my computer. I mean, we're all guilty of that, right? Yeah. I mean, just not to derail here, but just about a couple months ago, a buddy of mine, I walked away to go to the bathroom, and he just went on there just to pull a prank on me. And so, but that happens all the time, even though it wasn't done maliciously, but it was done as a prank. But it happens. It absolutely happens. So we can't just automatically assume that it was this particular user. But we can know that it was from this remote computer. It was from the system. Now it's our part as investigators to understand who was it, right? So now that's what we're going to do. So this is a part where we can start doing a little bit of that quick touring and see exactly where we want to start first. Now think of the refined results area, and I like to do this all the time because it's a good way to kind of compare. Think of it of essential album featuring the top 20 songs of an artist. That is the refined results action, right? Looking at things of those specific artifacts where I want to jump into a little bit quicker and start seeing the data a little bit faster. Okay. So at this part, what we want to do is we know that this guy had access to some specific resources. So the first thing that I want to do in every investigation, I want to know what this guy was actually surfing on the internet. What was he doing? What can I identify based off of his history, his activity? So what I like to do is I like to go into maybe his downloads, or maybe go into his searches, right? Let's take a look at his web history. Do we see anything in here that could be helpful for us to determine what may have going on, right? Yeah. So if any searches that are done from any browser, from Safari to Chrome to Edge to Firefox, any of that stuff will be captured in that extraction.
Like,
That doesn't matter. We're gonna capture it.
where they not get expired for this program?
What's that?
He expired.
I'm sorry, one more time.
He expired.
The felon, yes.
I'm gonna be expired to verify the process.
So if you want to look at the hex data, just to see, because that's the part of us being investigators, you want to maybe take a look at some of the data a little bit closer. There's something that's called the sources view. The sources view is going to give us an idea, a way to go into the file system. I'll show here that in a second of how we can start looking at the decks from a hex level, right? Because we can't just trust one tool. The data that's being presented to us, we can't just take it as face value. We need to do our best practices and validate that what we're seeing is actually absolutely correct. I do that all the time. Any type of investigation that I'm doing, I can't just rely on one tool that's giving me, these timestamps or this data. I need to rely with another tool so I can make sure that the information that I'm seeing is absolutely accurate at all. Or if I wanted to be a little bit, I'm going to use geek out. I'm going to go from the hex level itself. So I'll show you here there in a second. Right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The browsers that you mentioned just now, you mentioned Safari,
Chrome. So Chrome.
These are all user level browsers.
Yes.
Suppose I have a director that is using one tool. Would it still be able to put to our browser as well?
Absolutely. So we have a support. So great question. I'm going to digress.
That were like team issue.
Yes. So I'm going to digress here for a second. Hold your thought. Oh, go ahead. Ask it.
I was gonna ask this point that the agent was on the machine.
Yes.
But if the agent is not on the machine, you can still be able to pull out this artifact.
So if the agent is on the machine, so right. So let me answer that. So if the agent is on the machine, we've already extracted that data. Right? Now that we extracted that data, I don't care if that agent is on the machine now because I have already a data set of that machine that I acquired. So if it was to be removed, because you can set parameters on how long you want the agent to live on that remote computer. For me, if I know I'm going to be going in there and I'm going to be doing an investigation because I'll have a scope of like, I want you to go in there, go in 3 days and collect whatever you can that you can get from this remote machine. I'm only going to have the agent installed for 3 days. Once you get it installed for 3 days, it's going to self-destruct, not like blow up the computer or something like that. It will remove the agent. It has specific instructions built into the agent where it will remove. And so what that's going to allow you to do is going to remove that digital footprint on that remote computer so he doesn't know that you were on there at the time.
But in the event you don't have those agent on, but this system comes to investigation and these type of applications like Tor, etc., you still be able to pull that.
Yes. So
network and other stuff.
right. So what I was going to mention to you is that we have something called the Artifact Reference Guide. So the Artifact Reference Guide is going to give you all the different types of data that's supported when you're looking at your data. So if you're looking at like BitTorrent Core and all that stuff, that is an artifact that we've already done our research on, and we're going to present that data over to you. So in this particular case, it didn't have any type of like Tor or BitTorrents or anything like that. But in the event that it does, because that's what people use, they'll use like a Tor to log into like the dark web, and all that information will be captured. Yeah, for sure. And if you're not sure, if you're like, is that supported? Is there a specific artifact that we want to take a look at a little bit closer to see if it's supported within the tool itself? Then you can go ahead and do that. And it's there's a lot. So you can take advantage of the searching capability and just type it in, and then from there I'll let you know whether it's in there or not. Now, if it's not in there and you know that it's going to be something that's crucial for your investigation, let us know, because we want to make sure that we're getting all of those different types of artifacts inputted into the tool itself.
Yes, one. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So so definitely take advantage of that. So we do have an artifact reference guide that shows you exactly the different types of artifacts that are supported within the tool itself. All right. So now what we're doing here is we're still looking at some of the web related information. Now I want to go ahead and take a look at the downloads. What did this guy download? So once we're looking at some of this, the download information, I can see by just looking at this from, just from the list of things that were downloaded, that there was a PDF encrypted file that was installed called PDF encrypt, right?
Question,
Go ahead.
you're able to see deleted downloads as well?
One more time.
Deleted downloads, are you able to see stuff that is
It-
Yeah.
So the way, so our recovery method, the way it works, we're gonna either parse it or we're gonna carve it. So if we can carve it, then yes, you're gonna see that information that was carved during the extraction process, right? So great question, by the way. So in this particular case, we were looking at this PDF encrypted file. We know here that why was this installed? You know, that's not part of policy. This is not anything that has been approved through the IT team. So now we have idea. And by the way, this organization that we were working with, they gave all the users full admin access. I don't know why, but they do. You know. So right. So I feel the same sentiment, right?
Yeah.
I feel the same sentiment, you know. And we were just talking about this during lunch because I was working on a separate investigation a few months ago or a few years ago where I implemented a system where they only have user account access, not full, but there was a problem where the office manager wanted to have full access because she was complaining that every application that she needed to install and needed, admin access. So, the user access control that pops up, I'm like, we're doing this because, of security. And so anyways, long story short, we ended up, through the doctors that I was working with, we ended up providing her full access. And guess what she does the week after? She goes into her email because she's seen that there was a UPS package that was delivered to her door. She accessed that link, and now she infected the entire system with ransomware. So you can't train stupid.
No.
You can't train stupid. So you can have the best solutions out there. We had a barracuda firewall. We had everything in place, but at the end of the day, the biggest vulnerability is the human part. Right. So human element, that's absolutely what it is. So, and that's for us, we have to train our employees and letting them know, like, here's the security awareness training. These are the things that you look out for. The presentation that we had before, those are perfect examples in how we can teach these people or, our colleagues and, people that we know to avoid these type of scams. If you see these anomalies, you see these differences, look out for them. You'll see things in there, and so, but not a lot of people are, have this type of knowledge. You guys face that, right? We want to incorporate that in the, the school system, so we can prevent those type of scams. And it's sad because they'll target people that are vulnerable, the elderly. The people that really don't know, and it's really sad. I've been involved in so many cases where, tens and thousands of dollars were just, and it just breaks my heart because they didn't know. They thought they were doing something good. So anyway, I'm sorry, I digressed a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of show examples of why this guy had access. So in this particular case, they give him full access, right? So he has a PDF encrypted file, which is a flag. So I went ahead and bookmarked that, right? We wanted to see exactly, and by the way, what we see here in the far right-hand side is what we call our details FAR page. This is going to give us that full metadata information of that file that we have highlighted. It's going to show us the file name. It's going to give us the date and timestamps. It's going to give us exactly the state of when it was downloaded. Sometimes I hate Chrome. Chrome and I have a love-hate relationship just because it's just a memory hogging program, but it does capture a lot of information for us investigators to see exactly what's going on. What I didn't know about Chrome when I was doing this investigation is that when you start looking at some of the artifacts and a lot of these attributes within Chrome itself, it's going to tell you whether or not the file was actually downloaded. So if you Does anyone use Chrome in here? I'm a huge Chrome guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna change it.
I don't think I'm gonna stop.
yeah. Edge, so I haven't really dealt too much with Edge because I know like Chrome has been used, but I'm sure Edge will probably provide to send metadata information. But in this particular case, this guy was using Chrome. And so when you download a file, you'll see it in the bottom, there's a ribbon that shows this file has been downloaded. Now you'll have the option to either open it or you can save it to the disk. In this particular case, this user went ahead and clicked on open from that banner within Chrome. When you click on open from that banner of Chrome, it's now capturing that action, right? So now we're showing, okay, this guy didn't just download it by accident. There was intervention. There was acknowledgement for this particular user. Now, we're not saying it was him. We're saying the user account. The user account opened up this file. So now we can see here that, yes, it was not only was it downloaded in that it was downloaded successfully, but it was also opened, right? So that was a good trigger for me as an investigator to know that this guy just didn't accidentally download something, but he definitely opened it from the Chrome browser, and he saved it, right? So there's a lot of things in here during the investigation process that really raise those red flags to us and start looking at this a little bit closer. Question.
You keep saying that you're not sure who it is that. So using someone else on something. So that also.
So us as investigators, we can't, or we can say it was you who did it. We can say this person with this user account on this machine had access to this data, right? Now it's up to, if you want to take this on from a state level or even at a federal level, and as an expert witness, then this is where you would go in and say, from my, from my practices, from my training, from my knowledge, this is what I recovered. It's up to the jury to decide whether or not if it was actually him. And so through other evidence that it's actually coming in, and you can say, okay, well, from the timestamps when you logged into your key card, we know that you're here on your computer, so it was absolutely you. But we can't say that it is you, right? Yeah. So, but I mean, you get to kind of learn that when you're starting your investigation. So now that we have this information, we have some indicators that we know that there was a PDF file that was encrypted, and now that was stored on his physical disk. Okay. So now as we start looking at this, we want to know, okay, so there is a PDF encrypted file that was downloaded. Now let's kind of take a look a little bit closer on the PDF files. So what's really great about Axiom and any other tools out here is that what really separates us is we take the artifact approach view rather than the file system view, right? Because I've used NKs for many, many years, and if you don't have years and years of training, and by the way, this is not a sales pitch. I'm just talking about just experiences and different types of tools that I actually use. I can just go in here and just go into the different types of categories and say, yep, documents. Now I can go in and start looking at the different types of documents that I want to take a look at. And the way it presents itself is extremely, extremely awesome. Now let's go and take a look at all the PDF files. So within this PDF file, we noticed that there was a custom personal info.pdf. And now from here, we notice this guy. Okay, again, now we're putting the pieces together, right? There was a file that was downloaded, it was a PDF encrypted file, right? That allows you to encrypt it. And here we have some information where it can contain some PII, right? There's about 7 pages of it that we're looking at, but what's the other thing that I really love about this tool is what we call the built-in leak analysis tool, which is also called the Kinesis Explorer view. So if you look at the details card page and you see this little icon here, this little network icon, if I click on this network icon, now it's going to explode into what we call the spider web, right? That's a term that I just coined just right now. But this is but this is gonna give us a view of exactly what files have interfaced with this particular file here, okay? So when we started looking at some of this data, now we can start seeing exactly what was done. So what we have here highlighted in pink is our node. This is our node of focus. Now, was there any other interaction with this file from any other sources? So as we start looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move these things around, which you can do, by the way. You can zoom out, you can zoom in. You can certainly move this in different types of ways. So again, I'll just move these here just so we can actually see exactly what I want to show you folks. So now that we have this customer personal info.pdf file, now me as an investigator, where did it come from? How did he have access to this particular file? So within the Connections Explorer view, now it gives us direct paths of where this file came from, right? So now that we're starting to look at this, we can see here that this file was downloaded from some sort of Google Share drive, right? So like, okay, he has a Google Share, maybe he had access to it. We don't know. We're just gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he had access to it. But again, when we talked about this guy was accessing data, which triggered those DLP alerts for me to start investigating what was going on. So we have some indications here that it was downloaded from this Google Share, but not only that, we can also see some reference here of this D drive. Like, what is this D drive? Is it some sort of UMC path? Is it a map drive? Maybe it's a flash drive or USB thumb drive. So, okay, these are things that I'm going to annotate and know, so I know that these are things that I really wanted to check. Okay, so once we do that, we want to go ahead and take that, makes our notes within our case. And what I want to go ahead and do now, I want to go ahead and go back into our artifacts page or artifacts section. Within the artifacts section, now what we can do here is we can also take another advantage of another feature called the relative time filter. So the relative time filter, if you see this little clock here, if I click on that, this is going to give me the ability to place these anchor points. And it's going to tell me and show me what time, when I set these parameters, when this file actually was placed on this machine, maybe 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after this data. So what we're doing now we're scrubbing and curing that data into a smaller subset. So now we have about here, let me kind of go back here for a second, right? So here we have 146,000 items that we probably don't want to go through individually, but now we can take advantage of the relative time filter and say, show me everything happened 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after this file was placed. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use that relative time filter and that anchor point, and I want to be in the current view that I'm in, which is the current Explorer, and say okay. And what you see now, it went ahead and curated that data into a smaller subset. Now I can say, okay, what was going on during this time this guy actually downloaded this file? And give me those different types of filtering from those filtering options. So now we're looking at some of this data. We already kind of take a look at that web-related information. I can certainly take a look at the application usage on the installed programs. I really don't care about that. But I also really want to care about this connected devices, right? So now that we have connected devices, now we can see exactly what it was, right? So here we can say, all right, now we're putting the pieces together. We have a DLP alert. We have a PDF encrypted file that was used. We have the information that we actually looked at of where it actually came from, which was that the Google Share. And well, there's also references that it was copied over to a D drive. We don't know what that D drive is, but by taking advantage of those relative time filters, now we can pinpoint exactly where that file actually came or where it went to. So here we can see here that it's a Kingston Data Traveler. It's a 3.0 USB drive. It's it assigned it the drive letter of D. And now we can basically see those different types of sources. Now, to kind of go back to your question, right? How can we confirm that this data is actually accurate? By looking at this information. So if I click on this source link, what this is going to do is going to take me over to the file system view. As you can see here, this is how it explodes it out, right? And now, I just clicked on something else. But here is where you can start looking at a lot of that hash data. What's the hashing function? If you need to hash the data, we can. I think it already does an MD5 hash and a SHA-1 hash, but there's that MD5 hash for that particular file. Yeah. So now we have a way for us to validate the data and start looking at things that, okay, where was this extracted? Well, it was extracted from the registry hub, from the USD store. Now we have some references where we can actually see that this data that was being pulled and the date and timestamps that we're looking at are absolutely accurate, okay? So what do we do now with all this data? Now that we have all this data that we already have extracted, now I want to go ahead and maybe place it into, and I'll go back into the artifacts view. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and put this into a timeline, right? And now what I want to do is I'll go ahead and click OK. And now from all the data that I bookmarked, I can go in here and I can just say, we're going to maybe more, or where is my, do I have another filter enabled? Where is, I think I lost my data types. Okay, so in here, what it would allow you to do, I can just get, or whatever reason, I can't find it. But what I can do is I can start sorting on different tags. So this is going to allow me to put everything in the chronological order and seeing exactly the steps of what happened during the time of when this data, when the drive was connected, when the data was moved over, and then when the actual USB drive was actually removed from the actual system itself. And what it's going to do is going to put that into that nice chronological order in the histogram, and you can actually see that chain of events within here itself. And then at that point, I can go ahead and say, yep, let's go ahead and export this into a either a PDF file. I can export this into, let's say, a portable case. So a portable case gives you a way to share this information over to someone that doesn't have a licensed copy of Axiom, and they'll be able to see exactly what you've done. I can also export this into a load file. So if you're working with lawyers and you want to have them either review it in relativity or concordance or any other type of review platform, I can have them do that as well. And you can put those date stamps, right, in there as well. So so you have a lot of flexibility in getting this data outported into a format of your choice itself. Okay. Questions, anyone?
Chain of custody,
100%. Yes, yes. And in the beginning process, when we went through the case details, there is that part where it says scan information. So any other piece of evidence you add into your case, you'll have that, it'll come up again. So now you can see that chain of custody where it shows, okay, Darrell was on that, he added a piece of evidence. Leo's also working on this case. There was some other data that was extracted or collected when he was on scene. He's going to introduce that into the case, and he's going to be part of that chain of custody as well. Yeah. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, the courts recognize, sorry, can you spit this out in a format that the courts would recognize?
Yes, they do. So if the format is an AFF4 format or .zip format, but it is a tool that is recognized through all judicial systems. So yes, it has not been thrown out of court or anything like that. So you can absolutely, yeah, for sure.
What was the extension for evidence file?
AFF4, the advanced file format, and is also you can export it to a .zip container. Cool. All right. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna move over into that large collection piece. This is where we're gonna go ahead and start kind of focusing on those type of extractions or collections that that maybe contain multiple, sources. Maybe there's a couple of people that were in cahoots of some sort of thing that they were doing, and now we want to go ahead and investigate those multiple machines. Okay.
You got a question about?
Oh, sorry. Was there a question? I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's about, it's a sim, New York. Is that something that you can buy into?
So now with Axiom Cyber, so we have integrations with something called Automate Enterprise that allows you to integrate different types of SIMs to it itself. As long as it has a CLI or API, we can integrate those different types of SIMs into that toolset. Yeah, and then you can build workflows. You can build different types of or even incorporate different tools like B strings, Zimmerman tools. All these different types of tools into that workflow within Automate Enterprise.
This is not use direct function, right?
One more time.
This one doesn't use direct function command.
It does use grep, so you have the option to include grep expressions as well. Yeah. So use Boolean, grep patterns, reg patterns, and I think fuzzy searching as well. This one here, Axiom Cyber. That's it. Cool. Before we move over to Nexus, was there any questions around what I covered? Hopefully you found this useful during, when you guys went through investigations. These are the things that you can identify. But the most important thing is understanding those procedures, understanding exactly that methodology of what you would normally do. Now, don't get me wrong, there'll be situations where, you can't just go through like A, B, and C, and D. But sometimes it's going to be really different depending on the type of cases that you're going to be working on. It's not like just really, just put those down. Right?
Usually, get play, or you got up to date, you need to investigate.
I'm sorry,
You investigate play.
Why?
Person, play the user did what?
It's all really going to depend.
I would leave it on.
Right. Yeah, totally. Cool.
Your most common client-based as well.
FSPs.
Your consulting.
So correct. So it's going to be from a gamut from forensic service providers, from corporate companies, banking institutions. It's definitely there's a huge array of companies that we work with.
You're gonna do like a certification. That's here itself, and we're also training people who need to follow them, too.
We like Leo, did you want me to cover that or go ahead? So we do have a training curriculum that will go through this, that we have part of the magnet courses that you can get certified. So we have different types of certifications. I think pretty much most of the magnet certifications that we offer, but the more certifications you have, not just with magnet. I'm not just saying magnet at all. I love SAN certifications. Those are the things that I go after. But when you have magnet certifications, it just gives you that much more knowledge on how to use the tool itself, based off of the things that you already know, right?
So can you draw on a knowledge base and probably automate that so that
I am available. We can talk about it after this slide. Excellent. And then, if there's any other questions, let's switch over to Nexus. Do you want to kind of show that, Leo, or you have a second? Am I running out of time, by the way? So for the last section that we'll be doing is going to go over Magnet Ignite. This is going to cover those large investigation type of extractions. What really separates Magnet Nexus from Axiom Cyber is one or two things. It's with Nexus, it is a SaaS-based solution. So there's not anything that you would have to manage within, whereas Axiom Cyber, it is a managed cyber platform. So you would have to install this on your computer or server. You would control the updates and things of that sort. Oh, there it is. Say it. Apache. Not for Nexus. So Nexus is done by us. We pass the software. We pretty much control all of the updates. So you wouldn't do anything at all. All you would do is basically log into the system, and then you can control your entire tenant. So anyone who belongs to your tenant will have access to those endpoints that you deployed into the wild. Okay. Whereas Axiom Cyber is just that one-on-one relationship. So if I wanted to do an extraction off of one computer, I would only have access to that one computer. Whereas Nexus, you can do simultaneous collections. And the other subtle thing, I don't know if you want to consider it very subtle, but we're not doing a full file system extraction. Okay. And if you really think about this, and this is a conversation that we're having earlier, is that, you know, when you start looking at data today, right, terabytes of data, how much data do you really want to pull across the network? Even though this environment, this ecosystem doesn't exist in AWS, and bandwidth is a little bit better than you know, if you're at home or at work, but we purposely excluded that out during the initial launch because we wanted to make sure that at least category-based extraction is fully included. Okay, we're going to cover that here in a second. We will eventually add a full file system extraction and collections and logical extractions within the next few months, hopefully by second quarter of this year. Don't quote me on that, maybe second, maybe third quarter, but it is definitely something that we have on roadmap. Okay. So that being said, this is our magnet webpage. So, and by the way, if anyone wants to trial this, we can set them up, right? So, so all you would do is just get a username and password. You go into usmagnetnexus.com, log in, and now you have complete access to the magnet solution. So what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and log in. Once I log in, I have different cases that I created. What's really great about this is that you have the option to select different regions. Okay, and just kind of back up here for a second. I did mention this is an AWS environment. It is ISO 27001 compliant and also SOC 2 compliant as well, right? So I don't think FedRAMP applies here, does it? FedRAMP? No, I don't think so. Okay. So there is a level of role-based access control that you can actually implement within this tool itself. So if someone was to go on vacation and you want someone to leave off or pick up where you left off, you can assign this over to your colleague and say, hey, this is where I left off. You can go and continue my investigation. Okay. Here on the very right-hand side, this is where you basically can choose different types of regions. We are expanding regions as we go on. This is a newer product that we launched, I would say April of last year. So it's still an evolving product, but we just implemented Canada region about a month ago. Okay, and soon follow, we'll probably go with Brazil and other areas as well as we start evolving this tool. Now, keep in mind, you know, we wanted to make sure that if you're going to be doing an extraction or collections across country lines, that I'm not going to be sitting in the United States and I have to do an investigation that's somewhere in Germany. What's really great about Germany when we focus on that is because of GDPR laws. You know, we want to make sure that if we do an extraction off of an endpoint within Germany, the data sits in Germany. Yeah, right. And we want to make sure that we adhere to those different types of laws. Aside from that, like I mentioned, there's a level of role-based access control, which I just talked about. Here is our cases. So you have the option to create multiple cases and share those cases. Here is the endpoints as we navigate through this interface here. So these are going to be all the endpoints that are either offline or online. You can manage those agents as well as you can go in there and say, I want to remove this agent. I no longer want this agent to be part of my tenant. By the way, if you're thinking about multi-tenant support, that is also on roadmap. So multi-tenant will be supported in the near future. I can also filter by IP address. I can remove those endpoints like I mentioned before. It's going to give us a level of when that data flowed home back into the Nexus ecosystem. You can also create a collection from this page as well. So I don't necessarily have to be in that page itself. I can identify what that IP address is or the endpoint and create a collection based off of where I'm at here on this page. The agent section is a way for you to create those initial containers. So you can create a container based off of either region, department, operating systems, and things of that sort. So it's really kind of up to you on how you want to build those actual containers itself. And then as we start looking at the agent itself, you can see here that we have essentially full support for the major 3 operating systems, which are Windows, Mac, and Linux, etc. If you're wondering, but by chance, do you guys do any Mac investigations at all, or is it all Windows based? Linux, different flavors of Linux, like Red Hat, Fedora, SUSE. Yeah, I use Yellow Dog, just because it works better on the Mac machine. But what's that? Debian. Okay. Very cool, but they all work. So if you want to go ahead and deploy an agent over to those different types of Unix systems, you can certainly do that. You can also set the expiration date. This is really great for those type of investigations where you want to create let's say a Windows Gold build image. So if I know I'm going to be deploying this into my entire network infrastructure, and I want to go ahead and create a small agent binary file and deploy that across my entire network infrastructure, then I'm going to make sure that the agent is always in that persistent state. It's not going to be removed. It doesn't have an expiration date. It's always going to exist on that machine that you deployed it to. Okay, so you'll have definitely 3 options that you can choose from. And then kind of going back here, back to your cases here. Oh, the other thing that I was going to mention, just kind of to settle things. I like the theme mode, so you can actually change it from the light view. It just hurts my eyes. I just don't know why, but I'm more of a dark theme mode guy. So yeah, it's just personal preference. You can also just kind of change these views around. You can have it, in that details view or in that tile view. I like the tile view just personally. I can sort by, my cases, and I can also sort by maybe cases that have been shared with me. So if, Leo was working on a case and he's going to be going out, like I mentioned, he can share a case with me, and I can now see that case that he has shared with me. Okay. So if I start to, and again, a lot of the things that you're going to be seeing around the Santa Poco collection, because I'm into that movie Three Amigos. So here's, you can actually see where I can actually share my case with my entire organization, or I can individually set it to a specific user that's part of my tenant itself. Okay. So like I said, there's that level of role-based access control that you can set on these cases itself. If I go back here, I can, and I'll touch here in a second once we start the collection process. But here, once I go back, if I wanted to go into my Santa Poco collection, now what I want to do, I want to go ahead and start an investigation. I want to go ahead and start a scan. When I start a scan, now it's going to give me that little bit of that rules wizard, or that wizard where I can walk me through exactly what I want to do. And it kind of gives you the same look and feel within Axiom Cyber, but just a little bit more, I think, a little bit more efficient, more cleaner. So it's not going to require you to take, years and years of training to use this tool. It's pretty, I think, pretty click through, right? Or I should say turnkey. So when you start looking at the scans or collections you're going to be doing, once you click that create collection, now I want to go ahead and identify the machines I want to go ahead and start the investigation on. So if I wanted to select this JV demo PC, I can certainly do that. Now I can go ahead and click on this D. Carlson's machine, and if there's any other machines in here within my tenant itself, I can go ahead and do that as well. Now, what I'll go ahead and do, I'll click on either this here, which is going to go into step number 3, or hit this arrow button, which will automatically go into that to the next step. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is a tool is designed for that quick triage. So we're not focusing on, or we're not going to be collecting any of that physical, data. So we're not going to get the unallocated space. We're not going to get the logical data. We're only going to get artifacts from that machine itself. So if I know, go ahead.
What about a run virtual box on that machine? And set the flow, that'll create set the flow virtual box.
So the endpoints that I've created were in VirtualBox and VM Workstation. So if your question is, will it identify those? Absolutely. Yeah. That's most of the stuff that I have already, or just around virtual machines. If they either exist in Azure, AWS, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or even GCP, I've set all of those up just to see how it interfaces within the Nexus platform, and it was able to photo back into that the Nexus ecosystem, which is perfectly fine. And then here is where now we can go ahead and choose those different types of artifacts I want to collect from. Is this an IR case that I want to go after the memory, the live memory, or do I want to go after maybe those additional sources? Now, if I don't know what those additional sources are, now I can select those virtual machines, right? I can go after maybe some iOS backups. Now, on the very top, I can toggle between the operating system. If I know the machines that I'm going to be only focusing on are all Windows-based, then I don't necessarily have to look at any of the Linux or Mac artifacts. I'm just going to only be focused on just those Windows artifacts. So I can toggle back and on and off which operating systems that I want to choose, which would be part of this extraction. Now, it could be a multiple. Maybe I chose Windows machines, I chose some Linux machines. Then clearly I want to make sure that those options were enabled. And in this case, they're all Windows-based machines, so I don't need I don't care anything that has a Linux artifact in there. So here, if I want to go after those virtual machines, I can certainly do that. Cloud storages, if I wanted to go after this Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, anything that is stored on that machine itself, because it does, you can have those sync data. I'm going to go ahead and collect that. Communication information, Discord, Facebook Messenger, anything of that sort, I will extract. And again, there's a lot of artifacts that you can choose from. When you start looking at that targeted data. If I wanted to look at maybe those volatile artifacts and look at those operating systems like the US Journal, the $ NFT, jump list data, things that that's going to be really important for those type of cases that you're going to be working on, make sure that we have this enabled. Once you're comfortable and you're okay with the options that you're going to choose from, now you can either start the collection, or you can choose this additional processing setting. Now I can include YAW rules, right? We're going to be including Sigma rules within the next few releases, so we can include Sigma rules as well for those more like for those IR type of cases. So I can incorporate the Sigma rules or YAW rules into this extraction, and then if I wanted to add a keyword list into the extraction, I can certainly do that as well. Once the collection has kicked off, it may vary. There's some extractions that I've actually conducted where it actually took 20 minutes to do an extraction, and this machine was in New York and I'm in California. Right. So there's at least that was a baseline of what I've done. There was another machine that I've actually extracted that was in Arizona, but that machine had a lot more data than the machine that I was doing in New York. So your mileage may vary depending on how much data is on there, right? So I can't just say it's going to take you 20 minutes to do this extraction. It's gonna vary, but what's that? Yeah, it's going to take as long as it takes, but the idea is, this is all existing, in an AWS environment. You're gonna get those better results, just those, resources, within that cloud infrastructure. And they use, you know, application gateways, they use a lot of forwarding, they're using a lot of things that is gonna get to your data quicker than your traditional standard type of, extraction if I was doing it. And the other thing too is that now I can choose my region, right? I can choose a resource that exists in a specific area versus Germany or in India or in Canada. If I'm going to be doing an extraction on Canada, I'm not going to be using the U.S. The U.S. region. I'm going to be using the region that's closest to that area. So once you start the extraction, now I can go ahead and start looking at the data that I've extracted. Okay. So here, for instance, if I wanted to take a look at Mr. Dusty Bottoms, I'm going to go ahead and choose Dusty Bottoms. Now, before we start looking at the data that we extracted, let me kind of explain to you exactly what we see here. So this is the cogwheel. The cogwheel is going to show exactly all the artifacts that I enabled for this specific scan. I chose the RAM. I basically chose everything in here. I wanted to see exactly how long it would actually take me to get an extraction off of this machine that's Dusty Bottoms when it was in a further location. And it was fairly quick, as you can see here. It wasn't too long. And it'll give you that, the collection started time, the completed time, and whether or not and how long this would actually be stored in your indexes itself. Now you have a retention period. That retention period is for 90 days. So as a user, you have up to 90 days to remove that data from the Nexus ecosystem and copy that locally onto your file share or into your storage solution. And then here at the very corner, this is a download. Now, what do I want to do? Do I want to collect only the data set? Do I want to collect the data which includes processing? So it's going to give you that option. One thing that I will add is that we are going to be building in a feature because sometimes time is of essence. We want to get the data as quick as we can. So do I want to have that data collected and processed, or am I interested in just collecting that data itself and I don't care about processing it? For me, I don't care about processing it. I can just collect the data and process it at the lab. I just want the data now. So we will be adding that feature where it's just going to give you that collection. So it's going to reduce the time to get that data set faster than the way it currently is right now in the initial launch. Okay, so we definitely have options that you can actually do that. Now, once you have that, we have 3 options that you can choose from. We have the collected data set, which is also being processed. This is a processed data set and the collected data set, or I just only want the data set itself. If I wanted to take this look at the CSV logs, I can take a look at the CSV logs and see exactly what's included within that specific machine. Okay. Now, if I wanted to take a look at a little bit closer at the artifacts that are in here, I think it's airing out here. Yeah, we're getting there. I think it has to do with like maybe some internet connection. Yeah. So at least what I wanted to show you here is that once you have collected data, what can be processed? What you can actually analyze? I want to start looking at maybe the jump list file. I want to start doing a little bit of bookmarking, kind of what you did see with the Axe and Examine, but just on a web place on the web. Running maybe some additional filtering, the keyword searching, tagging some data, and then start correlating that data a little bit closer. And then if I wanted to do a full complete analysis, I can now go ahead and move that into Axe and Examine for a much deeper full file system analysis. Okay. But anyways, I just wanted to take at least some time to kind of talk about Nexus, the way how we're evolving that, how we're making this into a full load system as a full triage type of solution for you guys. Any questions?
Ultimately, it's going to match, cyber versus.
So they work hand in hand with each other. So when we start talking about, what are the differences between Axiom Cyber and Nexus itself? Why would I want to maybe even choose Nexus versus Axiom Cyber? We talked a little bit about that in the beginning, is that with Nexus, I have the option to do simultaneous collections against multiple endpoints, whereas Axiom Cyber is just a one-on-one relationship. Axiom Cyber, if I wanted to go a little deeper and do full file system extraction, I can do that by collecting the full physical disk with a logical volume, whereas Nexus is only artifact extractions based off of what we did. Managing it, Nexus, you don't have to manage anything. Everything is controlled by us. We control all the updates, see all the homework updates and things of that sort. Whereas Cyber, you have to control your updates. Right? You have to update your software, update, all your Windows updates and all that stuff. Whereas Nexus, we control all of that. All you need to do is just log in, create an agent, and now you're basically, getting all that data from the machine and going to do the extraction.
They're not to store longer than this.
Well, I'm sorry, my hearing is poor.
Start beyond is.
That's a great question. I was hoping no one's gonna ask that. So, we had talked about, we had talked about the, having the data stored more than 90 days, but then it started incurring costs, right? Are we gonna pay that cost, or do we put that onto the customer itself? So, we're incurring some of that cost by having it for 90 days, but ultimately it's gonna be up to you to download that data before that expiration date.
Because, I mean, it doesn't do this, but it does how similar, maybe it is with involved, longer.
I'm sure maybe what we'll end up doing is that if you want to extend that, we probably would have maybe a packet, and this is just me brainstorming. Maybe we can offer a package where if you want more than 90 days, here's a different package that will be maybe separate from it, and you would just be that cost for us. Yeah, but between, all of us in these four walls, in the event where, it goes beyond those 90 days, it goes into a soft release state where, these keys are safeguarded by, I can't access them because we don't want, us to have your information. These are things that, the data is still encrypted, so, but we can, back them up and put them into your environment, just in the event where it's like, things happen. It's like, oh my God, I just forgot that I was hitting that threshold of 90 days. It's false support, and I'm sure they can work something with you. They'll engage the development team, and we can get your data back. If it hits over 120, it's permanently removed. Okay. Just kind of don't use that. You know what I mean? Just don't say, I still have those 120. It's going to be a strenuous process, but we want to make sure that 90 days, that after that 90 days, that's you're welcome. Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns, feedback? It could be negative or positive. Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Excellent.